What's going on? I got 5 tips for you for if you're going to a recording studio that's going to make your process a whole lot better. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Music into Millions podcast. My name is Pimp Fried Rice. Thanks so much for joining me. We're going to be talking about, like I said, 5 tips for when you go to the recording studio that's going to make it so much better and going to give you so much more of a, profitable time being there. And if you stick around to the end, I actually got one extra bonus tip for you guys, so make sure you stick around to hear what that one is. So the first tip that I want to talk about is be ready when you get to the studio. And what I mean by that is show up on time. Because if you're there and you're paying for time, or if it's money that you're allocating in order to do this, don't waste your time. Don't waste someone else's time. Don't waste your money. You want to be at the studio session, honestly, a little bit before your time starts. That way, once that time starts, you can just jump right in and get ready to go. Also, when it comes to being ready, you should have either a USB with the beats on it that you're going to be using, or if they're beats that you're supposed to be getting off of YouTube or something like that, which, if you know me, I try to say try to stay away from it, but if you have to, you have to. Just have those either ready to go, like I said, on a USB, or have those already pre-emailed to the engineer. That way, all he has to do is just go to his email, quick download them real quick, and that way you guys can just get started right away. You're not going through wasting 20-30 minutes trying to, export it off YouTube, find out what this is, get it here, get it into the session, get it uploaded. It just takes all this extra time that you don't need to waste. Also, bonus, if you do, or if you're able to find this out, have the BPM and the key ready, because if you can tell the engineer that, you're already going to have them, like I said, a step further into the process, and you're not going to have to wait for them to figure it out, so that way they can get everything set. So that is tip number 1, just be ready when you get to the studio, that way you can jump right in as soon as it's time to get started. Number 2 is to be sure that you have your lyrics memorized and fully written. So if you're going to a recording studio, unless you have that type of relationship with either the engineer or the owner to where you can just hang out there and vibe out and work on your music and do whatever, you should already have everything fully written and ready to go by the time you get there. So that way, like I said, once you get to that studio, you're just jumping right in. You should know where you want ad-libs to be at. You should have your verses memorized. You should have the flow down. It shouldn't be, oh, hold on, let me figure out what I wanted to say for this bar. Or there are okay to do minor tweaks once you figure things out. Or maybe you have an idea that changes, that gets in your head at the studio. That's okay, but just for the most part, you want to have as much of that song basically blocked out in your head and ready to go how it's supposed to be by the time you get there. So that's tip number 1 and 2, which essentially are just be ready as soon as you get there to make the process smooth, make it fast, and make it just ready to jump right into it. The number 3 tip for when you're going to the recording studio is don't bring too many friends. Now, I know a lot of times when you're going to a recording studio, it's a fun experience. You bring a bunch of homies, you're making music, you're vibing out, you're drinking, you're smoking, it's all good. That's fine. It's perfectly okay to want to have a good time because music is creative, music is collaborative. You want to have people in the room, you want to get feedback. That's okay. But don't bring so many friends to the point to where they're being loud and distracting to where you can't focus on the song. Don't bring friends that are going to be distracting to the engineer because they may not be in the physical booth with you where you're recording, but if they're distracting the engineer or distracting other people that have to do with the song, that song's not going to end up being the best, song possible because they're not going to have people's full attention. So don't bring friends to the session that are going to, just be a distraction. They're just going to be there to have fun. You can do that after the song's made, after you have everything finalized, mixed and mastered, and then you bring your friends to the studio and you guys can vibe out and smoke and drink and everything like that. So that's tip number 3. Just try not to bring too many friends. It can get distracting and overwhelming, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. And now tip number 4 actually has to kind of do with tip number 3 where it comes to having people in the studio, but you don't want to get too high or get too drunk. So I know, personally, I like to smoke weed when I'm in the studio before I go to the studio. It helps me relax, helps me get into a creative mind state. That's perfectly fine. If you're the type of person that drinks or smokes or does whatever you need to do to get into that mindset, that's perfectly fine, but know your limit. As creative people, a lot of times we try to just keep going and going and going, like, oh, I gotta get to that point, and then all of a sudden you're at a point where it's like, I'm either so drunk or so high or so whatever that I can't focus, I can't talk properly, I can't make a song properly, and then you end up making a crappy song or a song that's not at all what you intended it to sound like because you spend all the time focusing on getting high, drinking, popping pills, do whatever you do. So Tip number 4 is just do not get too high, don't get too drunk. Like I said, save that for the celebration when the song's done and you're vibing out and listening to it, because then it doesn't matter how high you get, how drunk you get, you can have a great time. But when you're working, treat it like work. Even though we're in the studio, we're having fun, treat it like it's a job, because that's what you want it to be. And tip number 5, and this one actually took me a while to realize. It's so simple. I should have gotten this one. This should be number 1, honestly. But whenever you're going to a new studio, or any studio, honestly, it just applied more so to new studios, I felt like, for me, is take a deep breath before each take. So literally, before you go, stand in front of the microphone, breathe in through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Do it for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, if you can hold your breath that long. I'm not very great at holding my breath. But yeah, so take a deep breath, because what that does is that slows your mind down and allows you to focus on what you're about to do. So while you're taking that deep breath, don't think about, oh, what are these guys thinking about what I'm saying? Do these guys like the song? Think about, okay, these are the lyrics I need to say. This is the flow that I need to say them in. This is when I need to do this. This is how I need to do this. You start to visualize how you want the song to be, because what you're doing is you're slowing everything down. I used to have this issue all the time when I would go to recording studios. I would get like anxious and like nervous, even though I'm not a nervous person. Like if you put me up and asked me to freestyle or anything like that, I would do it no problem. But for whatever reason, when I would go to the recording studio, I would get like this anxiousness about me. Probably because I realized like this could be permanent, this could be forever. Like if this is how the song goes, this is how the song goes, you know what I mean? So I would always like work myself up, and I wouldn't do the best take possible, because I'd be like, okay, let's go, and I'd be worried, like, what are they thinking about me? Do they think it's cool? Do they think it's good? Do they think my lyrics are weird? Because like I used to be a very off the wall, like left field type of rapper. But don't worry about that. Focus on the song, focus on what you need to do. Just stop, like I said. Just take a deep breath, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. It doesn't matter what they think. Even if they don't like the song, don't focus on that. Focus on what you're doing, because music is subjective for one, which that's a whole other episode in itself. But you need to focus on the music that you create, and the only way to do that is by slowing things down. So that's honestly my 5 tips for recording studios. Like I said, number 5 should be number 1, because it's, even though it's the simplest, it makes the most sense and it has helped me the most. But those are 5 tips for when you go to the recording studio to make the process easier. But I did promise you a bonus tip, so if you guys stuck around to the end, here's your bonus tip, and that is to build relationships with the engineers and the studio owners, because these are the type of people, one, these guys know producers, they know other engineers, they know other studio owners, a lot of times they know venues, they know other artists. So if you get in good with these people and you start to build those relationships and you network with them and you just start to really nurture that, you're going to start to see the return on that. I'm not saying go up to them and be all buddy-buddy and get in, distract them from what they're trying to do. But if they talk to you, talk back to them. If they make conversation, make conversation. Ask them how they're doing. Don't treat yourself like, oh, I'm this superstar artist. I'm here to be at the recording studio, so, you got to do everything my way and how I want. And nobody wants to work with somebody like that. Like I said in previous videos and previous episodes, you want to be somebody that's always focusing on relationships and building those relationships with people, because that's what's going to get you farther in your music career. So that's 6 tips on the recording studio. Hopefully these have been helpful to you. Make sure you drop in the comments below which one of these was your favorite. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're listening on one of the other podcast channels like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. That way we can get more episodes out to help more artists reach their dreams of becoming successful rappers without having to wait on a record label. Make sure you take these tips next time you go into the recording studio. Have a great day.